father of five, operator of a corporate housing business, and I get to coach inside AirVenture Academy with my bud, Jesse Vasquez. Today's session, guys, I'm rolling solo dolo. Just me and your questions. We're covering the kind of stuff that slows most people down. So we're going to go over a couple of your guys' Facebook posts in the public group. We'll be covering frequent guest turnovers, pet policies, and how to land insurance and referral leads in your city. So let's keep it simple and make it make sense. But before we do that, we're going to have to go over the top three things that we do here and that we need from you guys as well, which is showing up consistently. A lot of you folks has been tremendous on your comments, on your suggestions on topics, and just feedback. So thank you for that. Thank you for showing up. We ask that you guys show up consistently, right? Whether it's live or replay, you guys can catch this on YouTube. Just don't skip out on those days. Consistency is super key. That's why we make that as a number one, how we move here in Midterm Monday. And number two is ask your questions. No ego, no, you don't have to be a skilled operator. That's what we're here for, right? We're all here to help each other out with your questions. So there's no dumb questions. Ask away. I'm sure someone else is thinking of that, or maybe they just experienced it, right? So that's what the Facebook group is for. And maybe your questions might be featured on the next Midterm Monday. And the final one is to share this show. Send it to someone, to a person that you feel like who needs that extra push or that extra guidance. Maybe someone who's on analysis paralysis. Maybe they feel like they don't have enough guidance. Share the show if you feel like it's of value, because we're here trying to elevate all the MTR operators, because it's a collaborative sport, I guess, if you want to say, right? It's a game, and people are starting to see the more you collaborate, the faster your business grows, the more resources you have. And it's absolutely not a, how do you say this? There shouldn't be any wars going on. And for those that collaborated, if I could speak properly, with other operators, whether it's in our academy or even in the public space, I mean, you can see how fast your business has grown, right? So let's break down these questions. And let me share my screen real quick and see what we got for you guys today. Share my screen. Let's see if there's anyone in the house right now, real quick. Anyone on the live stream chat? And if you guys got any questions, put it on the chat box right there, and then we'll try to get through that as well too. All right. Here we are. Alrighty, so first question of today is from Ursula Lovings. Let's see what she says. I searched through previous posts on the topic, but haven't found a lot of info on this. I have a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house, which is fully furnished, as my plan is to use it for MTRs. It may seem my area has a need for room rentals, specifically for only 30 days. It's close to the hospitals, and medical students are in need of housing for their rotations. I know I will need house roommate rules, regular cleaning, additional supplies, etc. Does anyone have experience with this particular niche? If so, do you have any suggestions, advice? Do these type of guests usually extend, or the rotation is a set 30 days? How many paper supplies do you leave out? How have you managed a frequent rotation of guests? Any SOPs you put in place? It's a loaded question, Ursula. I'm going to start off with your last question. Absolutely, SOPs. SOPs is a lifesaver for your team, for yourself, and even for your guests, right? The how-to guide is super important. And you'll find out when you're building out these SOPs, it's never really the final SOP, because you can't experience all the problems. That's why SOPs are generally made, right? To avoid that lag time, the setback, any issues or confusion. As you move along, you'll find yourself improving your SOPs, and that's okay. So the reason I mentioned that is because, for you to give yourself grace on these SOPs. I've seen too many people like really spend too much time on it where they're in analysis paralysis, right? So let's break this down with the first question that you have in this loaded post. Does anyone have an experience particular niche? If so, do you have any suggestions or advice? So you mentioned that it seems that, it's a medical, there's a lot of hospitals nearby and they need 30-day stays, right? Go the extra mile. I would call the hospital and ask what are their needs, because that's really what it is. We're trying to be a service to the hospital or to the travel nurses, right? What is their needs? What do they feel like they are having a hard time in when placing their students or their employees in a home? And position yourself as a service, as someone who's trying to make it easier for them so that they could bring in more students and more clinicians. And that way you could get more information, and then you could go back to the lab, right? And then cook up your approach, right? Your product. And see, do these types of guests usually extend on their rotation? As I said, 30 days. So yeah, it's going to be different, different markets, different companies, different hospitals. So the best thing again is just to call and ask. These are solid questions. For travel nurses or traveling medical professionals, they typically do extend, right? Especially if there's a shortage in the hospital. Maybe the hospital has a strike, right? So that's another indicator. If hospitals go on strike, nurses go on strike, or what have you, you can expect that they're going to be they're going to get travel nurses to come in. Let's see. As for the students, 30-day stays, they're students, so that's usually scheduled out, right? So that's already set. But again, calling the student center or the education center, the hospital, sometimes that's what it's called. They change the names, and get that information. How many paper supplies do you leave out? Well, everyone does it differently, right? Because you got to think about your operational expenses. If you're going to be supplying consumables, right, toilet paper, what have you, if you're going to be supplying that on a monthly basis, you're going to want to calculate that into your rent, right? So to make sure that we're not just throwing money away and everything is covered. Ideally, it's much, people find it, um, how do you say this? The all-inclusive approach of, never have to think about going to the store to get toilet paper again, right? I paid for this furnished rental and everything should come with it. However, from my experience, usually we'll just set up a home, 1 month's worth of consumables, and then after that stay, they typically buy their own supplies, right? They like to get their own types of soap, dish soap, what have you, paper towels. So it really depends on how you want to run your business and market your business as well, because you'll be talking to these professionals, and those are the little details you could mention. Like, you never have to think about, restocking supplies. We have that for you. And then let's see what's other. How do you manage a frequent rotation of guests? Any SOPs you put in place? Yeah, absolutely, SOPs, right? You also mentioned, house rules and cleaning, regular cleaning. You're going to want to identify what type of clients will you have, and do they have the time to clean? Is that something they're going to want to do, or are they more geared towards the service side, right? Geared towards more of the service side where they don't have to lift a finger. That's always a beautiful thing. However, if you're going to start switching up different industries, like some seasons you're going to notice you won't be serving any travel nurses. So what do you do then? Are you going to hold the same standard across the board, or are you going to have different products, right? The way you're going to present your property to these different industries. Let's see. Boop, boop, boop. Let's go. I think that's pretty much it. Yeah, but as far as SOPs, it's really just as boring as it sounds, it's really you playing out the process, right? Writing it down. Or I don't know if you guys see my whiteboard. I love whiteboarding. Flow chart. Like, I got to see the flow chart. I map everything out. What happens next? What is expected? That's essentially your SOP. So take the time to do that and just picture having, I think you said you had 3 bedroom or 2 bedroom. Picture having that 2 bedroom. You have two different travel nurses. Maybe one's a student, one's a travel nurse. How's that dynamic going to be like? Is it going to be co-ed, or is it going to be all males only, all females only? That's another thing you're going to want to think about. And set expectations right off the back in the beginning already, right? You don't want no surprises when you house a travel nurse and then it's just one travel nurse and the other room's vacant, and then you get a student come in. Travel nurse didn't even know that, how that property operates. So set expectations, same thing as the house rules, right? Um, if you're gonna do, it's essentially you're splitting the home, right, to different renters or tenants. Responsibilities, like who's taking out the trash on Tuesday? Is that something your cleaner does? Do you have a handyman, in town that's going to be doing that, or are you going to have your actual guests do that? Who's going to be responsible for that? Right? You could have, let's just say your cleanings every Tuesday. You could rotate, right? Um, those are little SOPs that you could put in, or house rules that you could put in as well. Let's see who's next. Let's go to this next one. This one's from Anna Marie Ray Ga. Hi, question. I receiving receiving requests on pets, I had an inquiry on if I limit if I have a limit on, sorry, I can't read today. What is going on, y'all? Sheesh. When receiving requests on pets, I had an inquiry on if I have a limit on size of dogs, 2 dogs, should I or no? Also, how do you charge on Airbnb for dog fees? I didn't notice anywhere to charge for that on there. It's okay on the Airbnb side. Besides pet fee, what do you recommend one charge for that? Thank you. I appreciate it. Um, if you're booking through Airbnb, there is a feature where you can create a charge. However, it's really on them if they want to make that expense. So collecting in the beginning before even moving is going to be super key. And you should be able to add that on prior to accepting the booking, I believe. Um, I would check that before you even accept it. If you could like change the price, I remember you could like change the price. Usually it's for a discount though, but I don't do too many bookings through Airbnb. Most of my bookings are direct, unless it's peak season and I run hybrid, then that's going to be off of Airbnb. But I would try to get in contact with them, see if you could get them on the phone, and then see if you could get them on the direct booking. That'd be even better. If you can't, there is that feature on Airbnb where you can create a charge. However, it's really on them if they're gonna pay it or not. So if you could make that charge before accepting the booking, that'd be great. Let's see. Let's break this down some more. Limit 2 dogs. It's really up to you. It's your property, it's your business, how you want to run it, right? There's some operators who started off with no pets. That's like me. When I first started, I read all the horror stories, on these Facebook groups, like dogs tearing up the sofa and all that stuff, right? And it was a nightmare. So when I came on, I was like, okay, I'm not doing dogs. It wasn't until later on I realized, like, wait, by me cutting off dogs, right, I'm cutting out the pool of clients I could potentially have. And almost every family has a dog, right? Especially travelers. You'd be surprised. Travel nurses, they typically have a pet with them. It's their little companion. So for those who doesn't accept pets, consider accepting pets. All you have to do is create SOPs for it, create a standard for it. And Anna here, she's trying to figure out what is her standard, right? She limits 2 dogs per stay. It also depends on how big the home is, right? Oh, here's another thing top of mind that just came by. Check with your regulations, because there's also a limit on how many dogs can stay in a property. So that's another thing that most folks tend to forget. Let's see. For me, I do direct booking and I just charge them on the first month, which I do hotel rates at a discount, pet hotel rates. And I do that for 30 days. And then that's it. That's all I charge them. There's some people that does 500, there's some people that is 150. So again, it all depends on your business. And what do I mean by it all depends on your business, right? It means, are we covering expenses, right? What we're charging? Because we don't want to just throw an arbitrary number out there. We want to follow what the market is doing, what's fair, what's ideal, right? And also, we want to make sure we're not losing any income, right? We're not just throwing a random price. But typically, it'll be like $15 to $30 per night if you were going to do like a nightly rate. Like for me, I do just the first month. First month, even if they stay for 3 months, I just charge them for the first month. And it really depends. Sometimes I'll have to switch gears because it's not in the budget, right? So that's another backup you'd want to have: your good, better, best price, your low, medium, high price. So consider looking into what is the rental rates, what's your comps doing as far as pet fees. You could find that through Furnish Finder, Airbnb, or even data tools like Price Labs, AirDNA. Let's see, always ask breed, size. Yep, you got that. All righty, let's go to the next one. This one's from Ant Bar. Actually, before I go to Ant Bar, let's see if there's any questions over here. KBF, let's see what KBF said. I saw somewhere in a short webinar that someone said you want to do pay per click to find clients. Is that true, or can we find clients a different way that's just as good? I have no experience with the pay per click. What's good, what works is a classic approach, right? Calling, picking up the phone, asking questions, qualifying questions, not so much to make a sell, but to understand what their needs are more, right? So, like I mentioned on a few questions earlier, um, you're going to want to call the hospital, for example, if that's the industry, that's the client we're approaching, and just start asking questions on where they're having a hard time in, right? Because it's not usually about, oh, we have a new furniture and it's lovely design, quality furniture. Like that's not it. That doesn't make the connection, right? Of us serving them, right? When we approach them with that servitude mindset, right, with our product, with our company, that's when you start building that relationship. People will smell the one and done transactional, approach, right? So be genuinely curious with who you're trying to serve. Try to see what makes them happy, what where are they having a hard time in. I say this 100 times every time I'm here. Construction crew, that's really where I started because that's my background, and parking is a big one, right? Like, I've heard tons of people saying like, oh, I'm going to target construction crews, there's a new development here, XYZ, and they don't think about the parking. Like I've literally seen this where their house is all set up, fully launched, like it's lovely design and everything, but they only have one space for parking, and they wanted to serve construction crews. It's like they have work trucks, right, with tools, and we got to be mindful with safety. When they park their vehicles, make sure no one can break in there. So just get one, like just get extremely curious with the type of client that you're aiming to serve. Obviously, zooming out, it starts off with market analysis, right? Well, what type of client is heavy in this market? Okay, cool. I see tech, I see construction. All right, so I'm going to go tech and construction. What do the tech guys need? All right, what does a construction crew need? And you just create your list, and then that will eventually be your approach, your pitch when you're talking to the decision makers, the HR people, project managers, right? Why your company, your property is different, and it's really here to serve them and not just looking for a tenant, right? Someone to stay in your house. But in short form, KBF, yes, the best way is meeting people, calling people, getting connected. I have no experience with the pay per click, so I can't speak on that. Anthony, what are SOPs? Standard operating procedures. So Anthony, just think of it as like, when you got your first job and you're trying to execute a specific task that's in your role, but you're new, you forgot, right? Maybe you've been there for 2 weeks. Typically, a company is going to give you an SOP where it's literally like a how-to guide, how to execute that specific task. So you're going to want to have an SOP for everything. You could have an SOP as simple as batteries, right? Emergency batteries, just in case the TV remote goes out, right? The how-to guide, that's a SOP, right? That would be for specifically for your guests. You could find the batteries here. This is how you open the remote, down to the finest details. And then you could even 2.0 those SOPs. If it's as simple as battery and finding the battery in the maintenance closet, you could do a video SOP, like literally just record yourself, right? Or you could do old school and get Google Word Docs, but more for like simple task like taking out the trash, or where can I find the extra batteries, the maintenance closet. That's easier to have a simple like a cheat sheet house um, SOP, right? When is the trash to be taken outside? Where can you find extra batteries? Where's a fire extinguisher? Anything like that. All right, let's go to this. Let's see, any final questions on you guys? No. All right, let's go to this last question from Ant Bar. Let's see what Ant Bar said. He said, what are some strategies to use in my area to land referrals and insurance leads? Okay, so it's similar to what we just talked about, right? Insurance referrals. And it's not just going to be insurance, guys. Like, I know insurance is the main hot topic, right? That's the main clientele that everyone tries to go after. That's kind of like when I first started, the main clientele was travel nurses, and that tend to slow down in a lot of markets when COVID era got lifted, right? But COVID era, like every market was killing it with travel nurses, travel, medical professionals. But now it's just in certain markets. But how do you find leads? So I'm not just going to zero it in on insurance, because insurance, you never know when someone's house is going to burn, and not even that you're hoping for that. It's a weird space, right? So it's seasonal. In the Midwest and the East Coast, wintertime, pipes burst. You know that already, right? So you could kind of gauge it and time what type of clients you'll be serving, depending on what market you're in. Obviously, like for Los Angeles, we know it's fire season. September, October, especially when the wind starts picking up. It's going to be fire season, right? So get familiar with your market, and you'll know, you could kind of gauge when the insurance claims typically pop up. Throw it on ChatGPT. You could ask them for stats and data there too, as well. But zooming out, right, looking for leads, right, whether it's insurance, travel nurse, what have you. Outreach. LinkedIn is a powerful, powerful tool. You're going to want to reach out to HR people, project managers, depending on what industry you're in or you're looking for, claim adjusters, relocation specialists. That's a biggie right there. And just reach out to them and just let them know that, you run a furnished rental company, and, you're trying to place yourself as a person of service for them, right? To help them with their displaced families. Keep the outreach, keep the DM short and sweet. No one wants to read a long paragraph and read how wonderful you are. Just say who you are and what you're trying to execute, what you're trying to help with, right? And then nurture that. Just because they don't respond the first time, right, doesn't mean they're dead and gone. Nurture it. Put them on a drip campaign, on an email campaign, and follow up with them. What else? List on other people's database. That's always a biggie. That's going to help you out. But listing on the big, insurance sites like ALE, CRS, United Corporate Housing, all those areas, I would absolutely reach out to them for sure. Realtors is another biggie. That's something I learned from Jesse when I first moved out here. He told me, dude, start hitting, the brokerages, host meetups. That's a huge one, especially in your market. You want to be known as the go-to person for MTR. And how do you start that? By outreach, going into the brokers, talking to realtors, being of service, right? Letting them know what you do and the resources you have, because typically realtors, agents like that, property managers, um, even developers like contractors, those guys as well, like they typically get, first dibs on when someone is displaced, right? Roofing companies, that's another one. Reach out to those guys. They typically know displaced families because they're the ones who's fixing their roofs, right? So just get connected with those guys and try to be of service. That's your B2B right there. Right? I scratch your back, they scratch your back. Um, what else? You're already doing it too, man. Like you're starting now. You're doing your homework. You're on Facebook. You're putting these posts, and I don't know how far you're into this, but just a reminder. You're not going to get your first answer, first win on your first swing. It's just super rare, right? So I want to set expectations. This is hard. Just like in any other business, you have to do the work, you have to be consistent, you have to be a student, right? We can't expect that, we know everything, or we're basing our fears or bad experiences from the past into what we're doing today, right? So a lot of people get stuck, or they tend to quit too quickly, right, on themselves, on their business. So just keep pushing forward, do the thing, reach out, right? Position yourself as a person of service, trying to help, not just transactional, right? There's too many folks out there, and you hear it too when you're talking. I've gotten reached out, I've gotten reached out a few times for people who wants to, arbitrage my units, other MTR operators, from the public, and it's really not relationship building. It's very transactional on their approach, which I feel like they're missing a lot of key areas on building a real successful business, right? Because they're just thinking transactional. But if you sit there, actively listen and think, like, how can I help? How can I improve what I have to make it work for you, right? And then as you move along, you'll see what worked, what doesn't work, and that's usually your 2 years, 3 years. You don't figure this out in 1 year. That's the truth. You have to experience it yourself. And then from there, once you have all these experiences, that's when you start to create a standard of what really works, that specific recipe for that property, for that market, for the type of client, right? It's never always going to be cut and paste. That's why I like groups like this, because you get to hear different. Here, let me stop sharing my screen. You get to hear different perspectives, experiences, and then you could cook up your own, right? Avoiding the mistakes from other people's failures and experiences as well. And that's really where you start making your standard. Let me stop sharing my screen. But yeah, again, just reach out to those companies, DM them. Me personally, I'm a phone guy. I like picking up the phone and talking to people. I'm not really into the whole sending an email or sending a text message and just kind of hoping for the best. Your chances there are much more slim. Now, to catch their attention, yes, that works, right? But what are you going to do after that? How can you really build that relationship and get to know each other? How can they get to know you? Regular human conversation. That's really how it goes. So, all right, guys. So, in closing, um, reach out to those companies, network in this group. You guys are doing it already, but join other groups as well. Right? You could join the nursing groups and see what their needs are. I mean, you go in there, it's pretty wild. You'll hear what the nurses are complaining about, whether it's the properties they're staying in. And then guess what? You can make adjustments to your property before even having nurses come in. So there's a lot of resources out there. You just got to do a little digging. But groups, different types of groups, that's where you could really get some details that can help you out in your business. Um, let's see. All right, guys. So any other questions? Nope. Alrighty, guys, that's going to be it for today. Again, I want to say thank you for dropping the questions and for the feedback that you guys have been leaving us. It's been extremely helpful. We are making some updates to Midterm Monday, and we're testing out what worked and what doesn't work. Our main goal here really is to help you guys out, operate better, make sure that you guys aren't doing things that's wasting you time and money, right? By hearing other people's experiences, the good and the bad. Me personally, you guys know this already. I like the bad. I like the failures. All right. I'm not too scared of the failures anymore. It took some time to get there, but it's because it's through other people's failures, even my own, is where we really find the gem, right? We find the recipe that's gonna improve us, take us to the next level. So keep swinging, keep investing in yourself in the education. And as you guys watch this, like take take action on everything that you know. I mean, if there's one thing that you could take action on, and it's not the entire session today, do that one thing. That's all it is. You don't have to do multiple things at once. Try again. For me, it'd be outreach. That'd be the one that most people get stuck up on, and they kind of save it for last. Is the marketing, the cold calling, calling hospitals, calling construction crews. I'd say do that first. That's the hardest task, and once you do that, you'll see how much you build momentum into doing all the other parts of your business, all the other tasks in your business. So action taking, you're gonna hear me say this all the time. Take action on, what you learn, because you could watch all this. You can watch all of the midterm Mondays. You can watch all of Jesse's uh, YouTube videos, which they have tons of value. That a lot of people has leverage to, get started. But it's exactly that. To get started, you got to take action. So don't get stuck in the loop of I need to watch one more show or I need to get one more book. Just take it. Doesn't have to be perfect. It does not have to be perfect, but it does have to be mindful, right? Alrighty, guys. I'm gonna leave you guys and catch you guys next week. Again, I'm Don De La Cruz. Leave me a DM for any feedback, any other questions, and maybe your guys' questions will be posted here on next week. Appreciate y'all for tapping in. This is Midterm Monday. No fluff, just real moves so you guys can actually use them, right? Um, Thanks for tapping in. See you guys next week. Peace.